Welcome, everyone. Your mind is full of worms, and you're going to be driven insane by it, as society is. This is a fact, people. Few people seem to understand that parasites are the most prevalent life form on this planet. Many of them inhabit the human body and seek out human brains to eat. Yes, that's right, like a bad zombie movie or an episode in a Star Trek movie where worms crawl in your ears and take over the individual to commit murder and suicide and such. The exact same things happen if you have these parasites in your body. What's interesting is almost the entire population of the planet is infected to some degree or another. Some areas of the world, 100% of the population are affected, and these are very unstable parts of the world. Isn't that very interesting? What is this called? Well, let's give you some of the scientific mumbo jumbo. You know what the scientists tell you, who never have answers for anyone? But toxoplasma, or toxoplasmosis, is a parasitic disease caused by this parasite. Make sure you go to the link provided below in this audio video here and go to our more information page where we can link you to an exact sources where you can get further information, which I can't go into in this short video. You can watch an entire video documentary on this produced by the BBC, I believe, or National Geographic. So this is not unknown. This is something that's been known for great deal of time. But as the actual documentary will discuss, it's very, very serious. They found that animal species, including fish and that were infected by this particular parasite, committed suicide. They caused themselves to stay higher up in the water so that birds could grab them. And it goes on and on with activities where all warm-blooded animals, which are infected by this particular parasite, start to act bizarre. Now, I've talked about this many times in my lectures, the fact that here we are as a pretty crazy species to begin with, oddly crazy. You know, why? There's no species that survives that is suicidal. It's very, very strange. It also seems to have an effect on sexuality and other things, and it makes you crazy. Women infected with this at birth tend to have more male children. Well, wasn't that interesting? 70% instead of 50-50, which is the general non-controlled sex rate of children being born. So we're talking about here a 20 to 25% increase in having more males. Now, this causes a problem to begin with. It causes sexual problems. I believe that this may be one of the major causes for homosexuality and other things. The more males there are, you're going to have a normal problem because of lack of females of a more bisexual, homosexual reality. This is just a proven fact, and of course just makes sense. It's all based on availability, and while people are born in certain ways, you can adapt yourself. We see this in prisons and other things where 40 to 60% of the prison populations are bisexual over the time they're in prison, and a lot of this continues after prison. So this is part of it. This is the key of why everybody is sick. These have been linked to every major immune system problem. You name it, it's been linked to it. So there are high and low levels of this within people's reaction to it. Some people get very sick. Others do not. It has typical of all the symptoms that everybody's going through now. You know, the classical things as scientists tell you, the influenza-like symptoms, swollen limbs. Well, don't we all get this frequently? Headaches, fever, fatigue. Everybody's tired. Muscle aches, pains in different areas of the body. So all this stuff then are immune system problems. And of course, the bringing down of the immune system makes a greater availability for all sorts of AIDS and HIV prospers quite well with these. So here we go again. We've got this worm in our head telling us to commit suicide, destroying our physical body. Quite shocking, people. I wonder if this is some sort of extraterrestrial plant here to keep the human Earth population under control. Certainly, where did it come from? What's its problem? It's been around, but apparently it's also very commonly found in common cats, which, of course, guess what? Cats are now outnumbering dogs. Isn't that interesting? So there, because they're easier to take care of, they require less space. I mean, there's obviously reasons for it, but all these cats carry all these horrible diseases. Interesting, people. This is pretty scary stuff. You need to look into this. There are some antibiotic treatments, but I'm not sure how well these work. I'm personally working on some sort of radionic subtle energy systems that can actually balance the subtle energies within you to kick the immune system in to take care of these things. But this is a long time research with so many other things. What's also interesting is how do you get this, or how do you come in? Well, cat feces are number one. Who hasn't been near cat feces? Litter boxes, they're all over the place. These things have get children's sand pits where cats have been in. Parasites can survive in environments for months and months, and it can be easily transferred through any area that it comes in contact with. And so if it touches vegetables, you get something, let's say you get on your hands because you cleaned out your cat litter box and didn't wash yourself well enough. Another thing, they found out one of the best things to keep yourself well, wash your hands a lot. Unfiltered water that's been touched by it, or we don't really even know, but to think that cats carry this in such a massive amount is birds are also transmitted. Of course, this is where all viruses come from to begin with. The bird flu, all flus are bird based and are transported around the world. What's very interesting is that when we start looking at the two most psychotic races of the world, if they're not all psychotic, but let's get back into the 20th century, who are the most psychotic people on the planet, and basically continue to be so. Number one and tied for number one are the Japanese and the Germans. Psychotic, really goofball people. The Japanese live in some sort of fantasy land with manga and all their bizarre isolationist policies, which continue to this day. And then we have, of course, the psychotic Germans with their, of course, Islamic buddies who have been terrorizing the world for 500-600 years if you go back to their entire history, but certainly well known in the 20th century. And what's a great way, and who are heavily infected? Pork eaters, which is 90% of the food or meat that you will find in Germany. And they also eat it raw. That's right, people. Few people know that there are pork tartare is a well-known German dish. Yeah, they kill the parasite, supposedly, by deep freezing the meat. But we're finding that didn't work so well, and there are certain infections still left in it. So we can probably consider the entire German population as being infected, and infected probably for hundreds of years. What's the other way? Uncooked fish. Does that ring a bell? How many people here are sushi fans? Well, Japanese certainly eat a lot of raw fish, and always have. The other thing that these parasite tends to do is they tend to create these sexual problems. They all seem to turn off and create some sort of a non-desire for common sexuality. Now, this is a prime fact in Japan, who has the lowest birth rate in the world, except, guess who, people? The Germans have now beat the Japanese as this problem. Because this causes not only for populations to go down, which is, very favorable for both of these psychotic cultures, but it creates all sorts of bizarre things. And of course, the populations start to act weirder and weirder because they're so sexually frustrated. Largest whorehouses in the world are in Germany, people, and the sickest, weirdest sex is coming out of Japan, who it's now common to be a woman to be never to have sex. And don't even contemplate it. They're not interested whatsoever. Sounds like toxoplasma to me. About time we get going here and understand what's happening. Now, we need to be looking at the viral and parasitic world dramatically in our health. This particular toxoplasma seems to be connected to all diseases one way or another. And one of the things that has highly been overlooked in the other very serious problems of this world that really have never been solved properly, except with pretty bad drugs that don't really help you, they may just keep you under control, is with mental illness. This has been linked directly to all sorts of bipolar, depression, etc. Well, the whole world is very depressed. Everybody says they're depressed. They're all full of toxoplasma, people. Well, that's right. So, studies have been done in the past with using oxygen therapies, and was noted in the book of the same name, Oxygen Therapies, the author escapes me, of where a lot of very severe mental patients were treated with high dosages of oxygen, which of course these kind of parasites and certain viruses and will not survive in a high oxygen environment. How these react to oxygen, it's unknown, but I'm assuming that high oxygen would kill these as well. But it certainly kills viruses, which these things may actually produce. And they may produce diabetes. They may produce every illness that we know today, which is immune connected, could be and probably is connected to toxoplasma. Who knows? We certainly can't believe the medical establishment, who can't even cure acne and dandruff. So I'm not overly big fans of theirs. I am not a doctor, thank God, and obviously they have to be looked into. But when you do find anything alternative, it's usually crushed. Now, I don't know what works alternative in this, but we are researching all these areas, and as I said, looking for a subtle energy solution to it, where we can kick the immune system in specifically to take care of these. But the fact is, when a lot of seriously mentally ill patients were treated with high levels of oxygen, they suddenly became well. So there's a direct connection here between viruses, mental illness, and toxoplasma and mental illness. Sooner we get on this, the better. There are some antibiotical treatments. I'm not sure how well these work, but if you follow the link here, I'll take you over to the page which is dedicated to this and talks about the diagnosis and the treatment with antibiotics. Now, antibiotics for something as horrible as this and short-term use probably is very good for you. I don't know. This is always a problem. We always want to look for safe alternative methods of being able to handle things like this, because there's always a problem and side effects with antibiotics. But there's a place for regular medicine. So let's get that straight as well. There are billions of people alive today because they're taking certain drugs that they need, from heart medications to asthma patients. These things are great assists. So there's a place for everything, and particularly for short-term use. But here again, always consult your doctor. Everybody's different, everybody has problems, but it's a good idea to look into this, and we're open to anybody who gets any discoveries in these areas that can let us know of any kind of treatment for this. What kind of alternative treatments are? We certainly know oxygen treatments are fantastic. There's so many oxygenators that are out there that have come to the forefront here that work extremely well for all sorts of things. But, you know, they found this stuff in everything. Beef and everything else. But they are low risk. But when you get into pork, raw fish, when you get into so many other things that are not handled properly, and anything that isn't cooked well, even raw milk and everything else obviously will carry these types of things if the animals aren't checked for it and so forth. But we live in a time where there's so much going around. You have to be very careful of eating non-cooked foods. This is something that's very important. So this has always been stressed of having raw diets, and it's always nice to eat raw foods to a certain degree, but not when it comes to meat and fish. This kind of practice is really dangerous. Even today, with a lot of sushi eaters, even Beth Midler almost died from eating sushi because of the worms that were in there. And these weren't some toxoplasma. These were really bad worms, and this is a fairly common problem with the sushi eaters out there. It's dumb. So if you actually eat these kind of things, you're taking your life in your hands. Horse meat is something that they've been traced in France to have this in it. So, there are problems here. Most of it is the fact that it will die if it's cooked. So if it's in meat and it's cooked. Another problem seems to be goat's milk and goat's flesh. These are two things that seem to carry the highest rates of this are pigs, sheep, and goats, interestingly. This is, in terms of consumption, obviously pigs is a high consumption for a lot of people. So, again, if it's cooked properly, you don't have this problem. But the bottom line is probably most people have this in their body from one way or another, or particularly societies that have indulged overly in poorly cooked pork dishes, which is a lot of the world, and now have a psychotic race of people murdering others and murdering themselves. This is part of what this toxoplasmic parasite does. Proven, and you can see this in the actual documentary, of those animals infected kill themselves or offer themselves up to do high-risk activities where they are killed. So this is very, very shocking, people. As I said, it affects sexuality, it affects other things. This is something, and how many other of these kind of parasites are in you that haven't been discovered or you've been exposed to, which are then fed on with bad diets and continue to staying well. You have to be very active to stay well. It's not just eating right. You have to cleanse your body out, take certain herbs, and keep a oxygenated body as much as you can, and cleanse yourself frequently. But don't do high risk practices. Stay away from plastics. You wrap everything in plastic. You put things in plastic bowls. This is madness. If you continue it, well, good luck surviving. This is an issue that everyone needs to be well aware of and well informed. So check the links and get the worms out of your head.